Immaculate Javia. Focused on environmental issues in mining affected communities. She was previously employed in the mining sector, but now with NCDC, she's doing a lot of work in the GBV space. So welcome, Immaculate. So Immaculate will be your moderator for today. So next, I will introduce to you our first speaker, and our first speaker needs no introduction. So our first speaker is Dame Carol Kidu. So Dame Carol, as you all know, at one point was the only woman MP in Parliament from 2002 to 2012. She as well. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, put your hands together for Dame Carol. Our next speaker is Miss Mary Kinney. Now, Miss Mary Kinney works in the Highlands region, and she is a human rights defender. Okay. She has been working for more than 20 years to assist victims of sorcery-related violence. So please give her a round of applause as she comes to the stage. Our next panelist is Ms. Hannah Joku. And Ms. Hannah Joku is a presenter on TVWAN. Now, by sharing her story online and other media, she seeks to support others who are experiencing violence. All right, so welcome, Hannah. Our next speaker is Mr. David Aunekarupa. Now, David, you met earlier in the Power Dynamics session, and he is the Commonwealth Gender and Equality. He's part of the Commonwealth Gender and Equality Network in the Pacific. I think he's the lead for this network. He is also the principal advisor to the Director General at the National Youth Development Authority. Our next up, we have our commentators. So our commentators are going to be seated in front, in the front row. So first we have Ben Theodore, Mr. Ben Theodore, who is the chairman of the PNG Disability Sector Coalition. Please give him a round of applause. He's in front. We also have Ms. Linda John, who is with the Family Support Center at the Port Moresby General Hospital. And finally, our third commentator is Ms. Tacy Calamo, and she is the Jersey coordinator at the Department of Justice and Attorney General. She is experienced in the gender equality and social inclusion space and in the law and order sector in PNG. Welcome. With that, a very big welcome to all our panelists, and I will hand it over to the moderator.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Good afternoon, everyone. Special welcome to our panelists here and the commentators. I also like to extend this welcome to everyone from outside Port Moresby who've traveled in. I hope you are enjoying yourself. Okay, we are probably running out of time, so I'll go straight to the questions. And I'll, the session will be such that we'll have the panelists answer a few questions that I'll be asking. And then we'll go to the commentators and they will make comments about what's discussed up here. And then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Okay, the first question is directed to Dame Carol Kidu. What are the main changes in communities and society you have noted? and how have these changes influenced gender equality and gender-based violence? And is it for better or worse?
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Do you want to sit here for a whole day? And a night? And another day? Wow, what a question. Sorry, I haven't seen the questions in advance. Ben, it is an absolute pleasure to see you. Hi. Yeah. Okay. I came thinking I was giving a speech, which I didn't write. And I was going to talk about other things. I didn't know I was going to get a question. Right? So I'll talk about other things. Is that okay? In the last session, we heard some brilliant stuff on the word power and power relationships, eh? And I just want to tell you a secret. When I was in politics for 15 years, and I was a minister for 9 of them, and then leader of the opposition, people used to think I was very powerful, eh? And young girls used to say to me, oh, you're our icon, you're so powerful. I will tell you honestly now, and I want to make this point today, I never felt so powerless, without power, in my life as when I was in politics. I never felt so powerless. So power is a very relative thing. When I was a teacher in a classroom, I felt more powerful because I had my environment and I knew how to manage that environment. Politics, many times you are very powerless because you want things to happen, but for many, many reasons, they won't happen. Now, I'm here as an old person, and that's what I've been asked about, and tell me when to shut up. I won't be insulted, right? I won't be insulted when you say shut up.
Well, we have 30 minutes for discussion, so you have a lot of time.
Okay. I've been brought here as Lapun, the Yautaudia, the elders. And I guess I am, because I'm in my 70s now, so I guess that's where I fit, and I'm to look at change and look back. The most important thing I want to give a message today, what we see today in Papua New Guinea and the horrific gender-based violence, GBV, and all of those things, I'm not passing below Papua New Guinea. Dia ite Dakara. Dia sene tau dia Dakara. Okay? Noga true. So I want that to be the first message. You must be very proud Melanesians. It is a result of change, and change that has come so rapidly and difficult, and has caused great tensions. So never be ashamed of your heritage. You are walking forward, and you are taking our nation forward. You are the very important people today. In this whole summit, sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to the politicians, but you are the most important people. You are the young generation. You are the ones who need to inspire your communities as they go forward. And I want you to remember, when you walk on 2 legs. Am true or not? Now, Papua New Guinea has a very unique situation. There is still so much from the past still with us. My country of origin was Australia, and I was not First Nations. I was a migrant to Australia. I was born and bred there, but I was not a First Nation person, okay? And there was no heritage really on that side, no culture really, in many ways. You have the chance, if you'll take that chance, to take the best of the old world forward and the best of what has come in forward. That is the challenge you have. How can you take the best of the old world and the best of the new world that's come from overseas with missionization and colonization and westernization and independence and growing our own nation? How can you take the best of both worlds forward? And that's the challenge I want to give you. Don't forget your past. The past was very different. The past did not have the issues it has today. And I could talk a lot about that because I was here in the 60s. I think, David, you weren't even born then, were you? No. I was here in Pari village in the 60s when David wasn't even born. And it was a very different society. I'm not saying it was perfect. No society is perfect, right? But everyone knew where they fitted, and nobody was very different from each other, except some got bardu, some got angry, some got... But everyone went to the gardens. Everyone went to the sea. They did different things in the gardens. The men and women did different things in the gardens. The men and women did different things in the sea. But there was a comfort, a feeling of being comfortable in that conformity. Right? And then we had special things like dava. Now, unfortunately, when Westerners saw the dava, they translated it to what? What is dava in English? Terrible translation. It's linguistic imperialism, domination by language. It completely changed the essence of dava, and it commodified women. But dava actually shed the wealth of women. So please analyze your heritage. Go back to your elders and try to dig deep into what was the basis of your heritage. It's not going to go back. We can't go back, but you can know and be proud. And there were bad things in the past. You know, violent killings and things. But women had protections around them. And I could do long stories on that, but I won't. Right? And when you think of what we're keeping from the past, some of it is good, but some of it is actually not the best from the past. Some of it is an abuse of the past. We're changing the customs, and often not very well. And it's often the women are the ones who suffer. Think of the other leg. And this is the main challenge I'm giving to you. You are the young generation. Think of these two legs. Think of the other leg. What has come from outside? When I was in Paris in the 60s, 70s, 80s, women didn't drink. Now, I'm not saying women shouldn't drink, but they didn't drink. You didn't see young girls spaced out on steam and all those things. And if a young girl was out in the public area, she had one of her brothers or a male cousin, Bamua Taudia, chaperoning her. So she doesn't have those protections now, okay? Think of this whole thing of the substance abuse that has come in, alcohol abuse. So when we're tackling all these things like the GBV summit, we must go down underneath, go down to the root causes. It's not excusable, but we must go down to the root causes and tackle the root causes and acknowledge that women were protected traditionally. I never saw women being beaten up the way they are today. In the 60s, 70s, early 80s. How many older people would agree with me? Older people, who would agree with me? You didn't see this horrific violence we see today before. The young people, you've only seen what's now. My last message, as you walk forward and determine our future, the future of my grandchildren, on those two legs, taking the best from the past and the best from what's come in. Because I know to be here, you must be very special young people to be inside this room. So being very special young people, you have very special responsibilities. Yeah, okay? So go forward and try to choose that pathway forward, the best of both worlds. And the second thing, my second main message, what is our emblem? This nation called Papua New Guinea, a nation I chose to come be a part of, you were born into it. You had no choice. I made a deliberate choice to give away my rights to anywhere else. And I've never regretted it. Right? What's our national emblem? The bird of paradise, the beautiful bird of paradise. How many wings does the bird of paradise have? Io, api api rua. Ah, Anna. Good to see you, Anna. Api api rua. 2 wings. Those 2 wings are the men of Papua New Guinea and the women of Papua New Guinea. True? Right? 50-50. And if one wing is strong and the other wing is weak and knocked down and being dominated in ways they shouldn't be, in the past they were respected for what they did. Will this bird ever fly? No. So this is a massive challenge we have ahead of us. How can we give the power that women have or had traditionally in the private space? The most powerful person in the Vahoi household in Pari village in those early years was not my husband who became Chief Justice. It was his mother, my mother-in-law. Very powerful. But when the decisions were taken to the public space, who spoke? The men. But women were powerful traditionally. And we must take the power from the past into the modern sphere and make it acceptable in the communities. Change those mindsets so that it's acceptable for women to take power in the public space. And then our bird will fly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dame Carol Kidu. She's basically summed it up, especially for young generation. Many of you are doing great in your spaces in supporting to voice out violence that's happening around our country. It's important for us to go back and see what our past was, the history, our history, and compare it with what the changes that are happening. Some of the things that are happening in this era is totally different from what happened in the past. And maybe in what we do, we can embrace our history, our past, and connect it with what we are doing. So thank you, Dame Carol Kidu, for that. Again, we have 30 minutes discussions, and I'd like to ask our panelists to keep your, watch. No, we were probably very happy to hear from you. Okay, this again is also around politics, power, and it was supposed to be a governor to respond to it, but he's not here, and I'm going to ask Dame Carol Kidu again, if you don't mind. So the question is, how can youth hold power accountable to achieve equality for all? What do youth need to do to hold power accountable?
Holding power accountable, often I see youth doing it nowadays through social media and things, but be careful how you use social media, because sometimes people are putting things that are not factual. Very, very careful with social media. But asking how to keep them accountable, it's actually very difficult, but there's all the medias like letters to the editor, getting people to ask questions on the floor for you, which is often hard to do, but sometimes you can get a member to ask questions on the floor to hold leaders. You're talking about political leaders.
Yes, political
leaders accountable. And the systems are supposed to hold them accountable. If you think someone is not being accountable, there are systems to hold people accountable. Going through the Ombudsman Commission, if you think someone's really doing something wrong, you can make a complaint, but not on gossip. A complaint with real factual evidence, and then it will be decided, it'll be sent to the public prosecutor, and then if it's decided there is some question to be answered, an accountability issue, then it will go to the Chief Ombudsman, who will then look at it and say, yes, there is something to be answered here. From there, it will go to set up a leadership tribunal by the Chief Justice, will set up a leadership tribunal to look into the situation, whether the person has been corrupt or not. It's a long process, but I think it's good if the public sometimes perhaps try it, but it's not an easy process. Issues of accountability actually are very important, but it's very complex. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just rephrase it again. So most of the times when youth are trying to stand up and talk for their rights, we tend to see them as young and not knowledgeable, so we should not listen to them. That's why, like, how do we get youth to question power? Should we give them a space?
It's not how do you get them to question their question. It's how do you get the older people to listen.
Yes.
Because traditionally, youth didn't question very much. Traditionally, Yautaudia, they were the elders, they were the ones, the holders of the knowledge, and they gave instructions and did it well according to the culture. But the young people didn't challenge in the way the young people nowadays do globally. They accepted the comfort of conformity, doing what people expected of them. But the comfort of conformity of doing what everyone else does is difficult in the modern world. Young people, they want to be different because there are pathways for them to be different. Before, there were not pathways for people to be different. Everyone learned how to plant yams. Everyone learned how to collect mini-pore. Everyone learned the same things. But now there are many pathways, and of course sometimes if a young woman especially takes those pathways, people will say, yeah, ibidaika, ibisinabada, ibidaika, Am I correct? Yes. Horrific lateral violence occurs in Papua New Guinea. Really cruel, nasty lateral violence that tries to push people down. Okay? So, yeah, am I kind of talking about what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll probably get the questions from the audience later, but I think everyone is satisfied with that answer. We'll go to the next question and to the next list. Mary. The question is, how has your experience as an activist been shared by the fact that you're a woman? What tips and guidance would you give young girls wanted to commit to becoming an activist for gender equality and gender-based violence?
Thank you. Before I go on with my speech, I would like to acknowledge some of our women leaders in this country. We have fought so long. We would like this to happen one time, and it's happening now. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the governors, especially Paus Pakop and the team, and the UN who is just at the back pushing this to happen. We fought for a very, very long time. And I acknowledge some of our women leaders who are not here this time to sit with me to talk, but I represent them all. It's something that I'd like to share. To become a women leader is not easy. We all know. In this space, in this country, we feel that we've been left behind so long. And we are always struggling to be there in that space. But there are times when you can see that you are doing a lot in various places. You are trying to put things together in this country. You are there for everything and anything to develop this nation. And it took some time. I would like to share some of our experiences back in the community where I come from, and we're trying to do this peace building work. And we were literally, trying to have that space. It took us so many years, as they've mentioned, almost 2 decades. So we tried, we saw the needs. In a very little way, we were trying to create peace in the community. And I am one of the person here who became the survivor. And also, I was out of school youth due to trouble fight. I didn't complete my studies. They had a fight and they killed my stepfather. And I witnessed everything, so I was traumatized and I was not able to, commit my studies. I was sent back home because I was sick. And while being in the community, I've been watching and seeing people dying of so many violence, but especially trouble fight. I wouldn't dare to just sit down and wait and see things happening just before my eyes. So we had to mobilize the enemy women's group, enemy leaders. And we all came together to at least do something about this thing. So out of school youth, being sick, I didn't really feel that I should just sit back and wait. So we had to come up with an organization, but it was trouble enemy, organizations kind of where to mobilize the women's, the trouble enemy women's group, not from the same tribe. So that's how we became with Coop Women for Peace in the year 2000. 2000, it's Coop Women for Peace. And they're still working. And we have seen things getting, like worse. It's happening just before our eyes, and we are just struggling there to, like overcome everything. But it's always respect that you will have for one women leaders, despite of any, tribes that they come from or from various, places that they come from. You need to really work. I'm just talking about the community level. So you can just get me, and then you can fix yourself to the other levels of where we come from and where we are working. So we had to put our heads together to really join our hands collectively. We worked tirelessly for 4 or 5 years. We didn't really had money to start off with, but money, like we have all the resources in the community. So we had plenty of food. We had to mobilize our young youths, our women leaders, our men. And that's how we became, like this group, and we were trying to create peace in the community. And we convinced the men to stop fighting. And now there's peace. So we were collecting all the youths from the, out of school youths, the dropouts. We, brought them together, and we were trying to, help them to have a second chance. And they have successfully, like completed their studies to date. They are working, and they are managers, or they are managers in the community. I mean, not in the community, but they are part of the government service. Some are working in the company. So, like, for me, and trying to really join hands with the other women's group in the Highlands. And to date, we are still working and working very hard to, like, form this women's coalition. And this is where I am, and I'm trying to, do this Highlands Women Human Rights Defenders movement. But, like, as you can see, we have been working over the years. And now we need people to help us, the young youths, the young ladies, to come up and fight the same fight that we have fought. And now we are here in this space. What are you going to do? I'm just challenging you, the youths, both male and female. If you are having a, big vision to change this country, then we'll have to, listen to the older generations. And we can listen to them. This is maybe a smaller space, but we can create a bigger, forum or something where you can take all the advice, all the good things that we have been doing. We can always say experiences, maybe on the PowerPoint or what. You can see the history. And we can all join hands to change. So here I am trying to just let you know that it's all out of respect, but you can have this long suffering. Don't think about money, where you stay, how you go about doing your things to mobilize your community or your leaders or your workplace. We can all do it. Nothing is impossible. Because we've been doing for so long, now we can, we have seen changes happening. And we have advocated for this to happen, the government and the NGOs to work together. If I'm wrong, lady will correct me, but we were in the same space. We have been talking. Yes, she brought me in, and we had a lunch there. So this is what we have been advocating for, and now it's a time. And now we are going down. I am challenging you, young leaders. How are you going to come and support the work that we've been doing for so long, and it's there? The work is there. It's all about teamwork, connectivity, and coordination. So how are we going to, work together as a team to connect each other from province to province and regionally, down to the ward and the district level? So we need to have some recommendations and talk about this thing, and seriously, we need to move this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for that, your comments. Like Mary has said, there's a lot of youth here. It's really encouraging to see young people coming up to talk about this thing. I'm just trying to reflect back to my time. I was not in that kind of position where I would, be an activist. Probably because I was not supported, or maybe there was no direction. So this is about the older generation seeing what we've done and the gaps that needs to be covered. And now with technology and different kinds of ways in approaching these kind of issues, it's about collaborating and encouraging the young people who are taking up this to, very boldly. Some of them, I just talked with one of the youngest youth, and she said she's not funded to do the work she's doing, and it's very challenging. So it's about us, the older generations, to support the work that the young people are doing. Thank you. To the next question, it's to activists, Anna and David. Maybe Anna can answer, and then we have David to answer as well. So this is about like comparison with previous work that maybe you've probably seen. In life, we get guidance from older people. They guide us to do whatever. Even in the workforce, we tend to older people to guide us. Many of you maybe have guidance, maybe you don't have that guidance. So let's hear from some of our young activists who are advocating for this issue. How has the work of the previous generation of leaders and activists influenced today's youth in their work, calling for peaceful society and an end of violence against women and children? We'll get Anna to make your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. So in my work with media, because I've been in the industry for over 20 years, I covered a lot of activities and press events relating to these issues simply because it was important to me. I was raised in a way that my parents allowed me to be a voice and have a voice. I was never told a girl's job is this, or segregated from my brothers and not allowed to share certain activities. Part of that, I think, was also because my father had come here as a refugee, and he instilled in me certain morals and ethics and made me believe that I could be a strong person. It was never about whether I was female or whether I was male. And one thing that I truly admired following certain leaders like Dame Carol over the years when I'd go to engagements and hear her speak was that you would get this wisdom every time you'd sit and listen. It's not about someone talking. It's what you get out of it. And I always took that with me. And they've always allowed us, up until today, us, I guess, activists and those that want to advocate, they've continued to support and give us that voice. And they continue to give us and share that wisdom and knowledge, and we take what we can from them and then just adapt it to our own situations. And so my own personal choice to go public and share my stories, because I'm a professional second, I'm a mother first. And as a parent, I'm frightened to see what kind of society I'm raising my children in. So it's really important to me that I get to share my story to make sure that young people like you here today don't have a story like this, that you become empowered enough to know your values. And also it's important to me that it's not about pointing fingers at the young men to say what you're doing is wrong. It's for them to also know their value. Most perpetrators of violence, I find, have been victims themselves. And so they're just transferring that, I guess, coping mechanism by lashing out and hurting the very people that they're supposed to be taking care of. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Anna. David?
First of all, I honor the land which I stand upon, the indigenous people of Motukoitabu, past, present, and aspiring leaders. Dame Carol Kidu, panelists Mary, Hannah, and our moderator Immaculate, ladies and gentlemen, and every young person in this room. Before responding to that question, I'd like to also go back and acknowledge all non-government organizations, faith-based organizations who run on a very low budget to engage young people as volunteers, year in, year out, without being paid, and such as the Stand Up One Time volunteers, the YWCA, Equal Playing Field, Clean Generation, The Voice Inc., and other youth organizations present today. It's not okay. I feel like I need to give credit where credit is due, and that is to all organizations, because you are the founding basis of youth activists growing and grooming young people. My story begins from being severely bullied from elementary school up to year 9, and I confidently walked out. The last time when I talk about bullying, it's not about being called names. It's about someone grabbing your bottom every single day because of your voice, because of the way you walk, the way you look, the way you present yourself. And so violence does not only affect women. Violence does affect men and women as well. And that's how I became a strong humanist, not a feminist. And one thing I'd like to elaborate here is that when we get to question young people ask the question, how can young people be engaged? Someone once told me that if you want to represent the voiceless, do them a favor and pass the mic. And therefore I am here to speak on behalf of the young people and also many who are in this room who feel that same energy. My activism started when I was at the age of 15 as a peer educator with the YWCA. Thank you, Janet Cabo, the Executive Director for YWCA here. I acknowledge you, as well as the UNFPA as a peer educator. I think the role of activism has transformed from the colonial times to the present times. And it's not because we are advancing forward. It's because violence in the past was never recorded. Nowadays, it is filmed and it's uploaded online, and therefore it's made visible. But then, like what we always say, you cannot expect changes when you are not doing something different to find a solution. When we talk about empowerment, what does empowerment mean to us? Empowerment work, empowerment program, empowerment youth. But what does that translate in a concrete and practical way? And so I had to brainstorm after winning the Man of Honor award and the Commonwealth Young Champion in the gender agenda. And I had to brainstorm. Instead of working with victims, I started reaching out to work with men, to involve men in the conversation and why it is important for men to be part of that solution. And so for young people, we get to ask the reason why, ask young people, how can you create that change? Let me tell you that Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook when he was young in university, and that's the power of young people. Because of him, everyone is connected. Young people are energetic, young people are transformers, young people are economic drivers, young people are activists, and our voices matter. And if we are not included in spaces like this, we will try every way, just like water, like I said this morning, to break down those walls that box us up. And so my initiative called #Men and Boys Too started, where it is a safe space that brings men and boys to talk about the simplest form of violence. And as we know, violence, the mother of abuses, they get to educate themselves on physical abuse, mental abuse, financial abuse, social abuse, lateral violence, sexual abuse, and so forth. Since 2017, after founding hashtag Men and Boys Too, funding it through my own pocket money, I've impacted so far 176 young men, and 27% of these men have admitted that they have been perpetrators of violence, and this is due to sexual violence being experienced while they were children. So before we get to call men to man up, they have to start heal first, because it's from the place of healing that transformation happens. And as you can see, that even though we use gender in front of the violence, I feel that this is more a balanced conversation to have a man on this panel, so that we understand that violence does not only affect us, it affects your child who is living with disability. It can affect someone who is expressing themselves who do not identify as neither of the gender constructs that we have built. So coming back to how can young people drive that influence, social media is one of them, but I believe that if you want to drive change online, you have to go offline. Switch your phone off. And that's by engaging in raw conversations with men, finding out what's wrong with you, because everyone says that you are wrong. So in the sessions, what I do is that I break up the conversation of violence, and it comes down to power and control, that someone wants to have power over you and control over you. And we also go through the legal help that men need. But what we found out that there are no psychological and mental health clinics in Papua New Guinea, and therefore the only way outlet is for men to lash out into violence. And we always, and the mission of hashtag Men and Boys Too is to redefine masculinity in Melanesian society, because we have put men as a hero, that man is supposed to fight, man is supposed to be aggressive, man is supposed to be taking care of their children, and we come up with all these stereotypes, that man is supposed to pay the bill, man is supposed to have a degree, man is supposed to drive the women. But this is the 21st century, where when women are empowered, the entire society also wins. So instead of disempowering or stopping the voice of men to be empowered, they have to start accepting that women can pay the bill too, that women can drive a vehicle too. My sisters drive me everywhere, and I haven't passed my driving license yet. And these are the conversations which men have to accept, that if they feel that we all exist and co-create and coexist as humans, rather than being seen as the opposite gender, then we get to kill violence, because we exist in a way that our values embrace and see the value in humanity. And so that comes back to our values. If we call ourselves activists, we also have to be held accountable. So which means that the things that we upload on Facebook, that has to be also filed into a report of monitoring and evaluation. How do we make sure that the work that we do is progressing, instead of just good selfie on Facebook? Because here I am talking about the transformation of activism that happened. This never happened in the past. Old people don't know what selfie is. And so we have to hold young people accountable as well. And hold me accountable for what I am saying in this forum in the next 2 years, in the next year. And it's about acknowledging what other organizations are doing. I know that I am limited, because once I lose my job, that's where hashtag Men and Boys Too stops. So many people feel that information that they have is power, but then power is knowing when to release it as well. And so what I do is I offer free services, consultation with people who can actually take on the resources, take on the methodology of how the conversation is driven, so that they can further expand and have the conversation trickling down at the community level. And when we talk about passion, and if that's not the intention that you have, then stop doing that and start selling ice cream. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna and David. That was very informative. And I hope everyone's taken note of what's been shared. Again, I want to reemphasize what we do is not like profit business kind of thing. It's from the heart. It's about passion. And you've heard from the previous session, Ms. Yana has explained about us having that heart and passion to do this. So we must be genuine in what we do. And if you are really serious about addressing this issue, it must come from your heart. Thank you. Our final question to wrap up the panelist session, and it goes to all of you. I'll probably give you 2 minutes each to answer this question. What can be gained from intergenerational experience sharing this session and exchange on activism like this for the benefit of gender equality? The next question, how can different generations work together to address gender-based violence and achieve gender equality? We'll start with Dame Carol Kiddo.
I'd rather turn back to another question you asked before, and they can answer that one. I want to go back to the question you asked on accountability, because it's very critical. And David very rightly acknowledged the many good programs that are displayed out there on the tables. And I think most of them are initiated by and funded by, although they may integrate with government, but basically it's our development partners. Would I be correct? UNFPA, UN Women, all of our development partners. And in terms of accountability, I would like to see your forum, and I'm not supposed to influence what you do, but ask for this accountability for our government, and that includes the government I was part of in the past. I'm not criticizing present governments. None of our governments since independence have truly been accountable to our people in these social issues and all of those things, in the sense of putting their money where their mouth is. So in your recommendations to go to your leaders, please, I'd like to see if perhaps you consider this, that accountability, that the government should ensure that if donor-initiated projects are doing a good job, and many of them do an excellent job, but once the donor's project cycle is finished, they often die, right? And so ask our leaders, if something is good, please put your money in, keep it going, because everything does require some funds. You can do a lot without funds, a huge amount without funds, but really down to the crux of things, you do need some basic funds to keep things going. If each member could put in something from their DSIP, anything, but government, please, fund these things. I mean, so many good programs, and thank you for acknowledging that, David. Your question was, I went on to
That's okay.
But that's okay, yeah.
Thank you. For this question, I think I've mentioned a bit earlier, and it's to do with building connectivity and coordination and team play. So in the past, I think around 70s, that time we were in the primary school, and I still remember they had a platform for the youths in the country, the youth platform. And now, maybe it's been some while that, it's not happening in the country. So in order for us to, bring all the youths together, there are work going on in the churches. There are church youths, women's groups, NGOs, CBOs. Everyone, we are taking care of the youths back in the community. But it's the platform that, it needs to be strengthened. And it has to be in reality. It has been there. And we have the the desk for the youths in the community development. And I haven't seen active involvements of the community development in this country. Maybe or maybe not, they are doing something, but it's been dormant for a while. We need to really come up with something concrete because the youths are dying in this country. If we are not doing anything in the near future, you will have no, space for the youths to, have prosperity in this country. Because right now when I'm talking, there are youths there that we've been working and we are dealing with drug addicts. Before I came here, I had 13 to be counseled. I counseled nearly, 12. One just went out, 12 of them. And it was the initiative that was taken by the Community Development Agency in Simbu. They referred them to me for trauma counseling. And when I explore, there's lots in it. So we need to really get our heads down together. There are work, it's already in place. It's happening with the church programs and everything. They've gathered all the youths, they're ready to move, but it's just that we are not connected properly. We need to work together as a team to change our youths for the future. If we are not doing anything now, then future, I don't know, it's in question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We'll hear from Anna.
I'm going to just read something I had scribbled down earlier because I think this is going to answer from my point of view. Every incident of gender-based violence is evidence that we have failed as a nation to protect our people, that there is a lack of awareness on our constitution and what our rights are as citizens of Papua New Guinea. Every single time a woman reaches out to me for help, I see a person who doesn't know her self-worth. I hear about a man who doesn't know he is breaking the law. And when there are children involved, I see our future leaders broken, hurt, and in despair. More often than not, the perpetrators are victims, and this is their coping mechanism. Every time I get invited to speak at an event, I hear the statistics. That 2 out of 3 women in Papua New Guinea is a victim of gender-based violence, domestic violence, intimate partner violence being the most prevalent. So why am I here today? I'm a professional, but I'm a mother, and this is what terrifies me in seeing where this society is going. There's a lack of respect for our elders, a lack of respect for leadership, a lack of respect for others, but especially a lack of self-respect. Violence is not cultural and it's not religious, and it's not anyone else's fault but the individual who made a conscious decision to commit that crime. That's right, violence is a crime. And when a crime has been committed, that means a law has been broken. Laws that were created to protect us. And this is my fight for justice. My story is just one of thousands of women in Papua New Guinea. And as a media personality, I have access to one of the most powerful tools, and that's media, a platform on which I get to stand to be a voice that can be amplified. I advocate against all forms of violence to make sure that you don't have a similar story or that you don't become a statistic. About a month ago, I received a message, a Facebook message from a young woman in her early 20s. She was distraught and she was anxious, and she asked to WhatsApp me. So whilst doing my duties at home, I replied to her. Now, her first few messages told me everything that I needed to know. She was a victim of domestic violence and she was suicidal. I settled my daughter into bed and gave this young woman my full attention. What ensued was a 3-hour conversation that ended at 2 a.m., with me emotionally drained and her calm, at peace, and with the promise to me that she would not hurt herself. This is the 3rd time that I've had a situation like this. The first was over 6 years ago. 3 different women of different origins, different ages, and different backgrounds. What connected them all is the violence that they live in, the violence that we live in, and this has to change. People tell me that I'm a strong woman, but I believe that the strongest ones are still trying to find a way out. They put family, children, in-laws, careers, community, society, culture, even the country, and love first. So to those who say that it's an easy situation and you can just walk out, please don't judge a situation you don't understand. It's been an honor to share with you today, and I hope each of you remembers your value, realizes your potential, and lives by the conviction that you are here for a purpose. Somebody recently said to me in conversation, "When you know," and that's a true statement. So whenever I get the chance to stand and be the voice for victims of violence, I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for that. We'll almost time, but we'll give you 2 minutes, David.
2 minutes to answer 2 questions. One was the relevance of intergenerational dialogue. And so that's the first one that I picked up. So I'm just going to start navigating from that. The importance of intergenerational dialogue. From where I come from, Petlarai of Arama Province. Sorry, Arama Coast Central Province. Woo. In my culture, we say ahlua. That's an intergenerational dialogue when our elders would roll out the mat and we would all gather at what we call Numapara, which is a platform where clans meet and everyone, people from all genders and all class and status would sit down and have a meeting. That's the importance of intergenerational dialogue. But what seems to be misleading is that young people don't want to be spoken to. You have to start listening to us too. And so that's where the gap is. Secondly, the importance of intergenerational dialogue should also align with the structures that we have in place. That is, laws and structural reforms where young people's leadership is seen as vital in pushing forward the agendas. In my role as an individual, as an activist, what I influence with the department that I work with, the National Youth Development Authority, one of the models that I am fixing is called the Youth Council Network, which we are using the Commonwealth model and introducing that into local youth development councils, to establish local youth development councils and the district youth development councils. In the organic law of provincial and local level government, it does not indicate that there must be a young person represented at the DDA boards. So we need that legal reform so that young people have a voice, so that they have a voice to the budget in terms of implementation. And so we have to make that conducive and workable and pragmatic for young people. At the provincial level as well, many of the youth representatives, or at the PEC, Provincial Executive Council, where the youth representative sits, is politicized. Someone who is politically appointed and is probably normally 50 years and older, representing young people. So that needs to be changed. So we at the National Youth Development Authority have a mammoth task to do. And so far we've established 12 district youth development councils and 38 local youth development councils, slowly but surely getting there. And so the importance of it is the youth voice and also reforms, system reforms. Thirdly is information sharing. Most times young people don't know where to run to, and they don't know how to participate. It's because we don't make information accessible and reachable to young people. And that also depends on the kind of information that we are circulating on social media, which young people are glued to. So we, on our social media platforms, instead of talking bull crap, we have to start educating our young people for their rights, about early detection of violence, how to walk out, about redefining masculinity, that violence is not our culture. So to conclude, I'd like to end with the value from my culture. And there are 2 stories that I'd like to tell. There were 2, a young man and an older man, who were tasked to chop down a forest. The young person used the axe with his full energy, but was feeling tired every now and then. The older man would chop one tree down, sharpen his axe, and the other. The young person had blisters on his hand after 15 minutes, while the older one kept going. And he asked, "Why did you do that? You know, even though you're older, but you keep chopping down trees faster than I am, and now I have blisters on my hand. And the moral of that story is that sometimes we have to take one step back in order to take 2 steps forward, so that we have to sharpen our axis. I acknowledge the energy that we are driving right now, but we have to find that wisdom of how to re-strategize. Because we spend a lot of money on COVID-19, we spend a lot of money on cancer. But gender-based violence, the 3 women who are seated here, out of these 3 women, 2 have experienced at least sexual or domestic violence. And that is true. And so this comes to my conclusion. Another value from my culture. My ancestors were voyagers who came from Asia. And so as they were traveling up through the Pacific in the second migration, they had the older generation or the older men who were navigating the Southern Cross while the young people paddled. So in order for us to move forward, the importance of intergenerational dialogue is that we need the wisdom of our older generation. Young people need to submit and listen as well. But then you cannot do away with the young people, because that's where the energy is. So you guide us while we paddle. So that's the value of intergenerational dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Basically, he summed it up very nicely. It's about wisdom and for the young generation to also listen to the older generation, and we collaborate. With that, I thank you, panelists, for your expertise, your time. But I think Dame wants to add on what David has said, so we'll give a probably, let's say, a minute.
Basically for the rapporteurs. Where are our rapporteurs? Where are the rapporteurs? Yeah, David made an extremely important point in there, and I hope it will go into the resolutions. Like before, the one I said before, I would love to see in the resolutions that you put forward to your, to the people in Parliament, the one about the assessing of all development partner projects. And I think most of them are usually very well thought out and bring good impact, but they are non-sustainable because government doesn't come to the party and put their money in. The second one is, I think, ask for a legal amendment to the DDA Act, because at present the amendment of 2014 adds in for rural areas 2 women, for urban areas 1 woman, on top of any elected women. Well, it doesn't mention youth. Ask for an amendment to the DDA Act to get youth representation in the ward councils and the DDA. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you. Now, we'll go on to the commentators. If you have any questions in regards to what has been discussed, you can ask, and we'll start with Linda. We'll start from that end up. Okay, then we'll start with the gentleman.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator, and thank you, the speakers. Let me start by saying this. Can I just ensure that I am a Papua New Guinean, and what we're discussing, or the agenda for today, is about what is happening right from the household to the streets, and it's still happening. The one question that I try to understand is, or one would ask, is what is the language mainly spoken when violence is carried out? So on that note, I would like to speak in Pidgin. Because me believe person, You don't speak English time you know how much long. Partner blue you. You can conduct all these programs in English. Now you can conduct program blue parliament law English. That's all time violence come up. Language am different. Because you like inflicting fear. And I take it from my sister Hannah. From your experience, you speak very good English, but maybe, I'm just assuming that when the violence happened, it would have been spoken in Pidgin, exchange of words in fiery words in Pidgin. You try to defend yourself in Pidgin. The perpetrator tried to speak in Pidgin because you understand the situation and you want to inflict him. This is a fear. Young men and women, you know what you want. Relationship is not easy in this country, yeah. And the speakers have spoken. But my point here is I'd like us to really look at the context of what we give to the young youth today. And they must understand it from their house, to the roads, to the school, and eventually until they come a big Plaman Mary. Because it's not English all the way. They only look at it on Facebook. But I think violence, talk pushing below violence, language below violence, and talk pushing. Whatever is reported at the police station, and when you go to the courts, statement below court, and by asking, let me use him one weapon, or let me talk one him through. And you won't write it in English. You can't translate what the element when it's in court. You will have to say it the way it is in Pidgin. All right? So I like to justify that the language that we speak, we be careful how we integrate it into our young youths today, because they need to understand the language of violence. And they don't want to learn the language of violence, but they must know what is that language that they are fighting. Our speakers have spoken. I touch on our paper to Parliament, which is very, very important. There is a gender-based violence, I think gender-based policy with the Department for Community Development. I don't know how much money that goes into to fund that policy, and if that policy has been implemented, and more importantly, if it has been monitored and reported. To my knowledge, I don't think it has been, and no one talks about it in Parliament. So, Tok Blong, Dame Kidu, and be straightforward. The outcome paper must ensure that a follow-through must be done so that the government takes ownership of that policy. The government must implement it with our youth. Must always inclusive. On that note, I'd like to acknowledge our youth with disability who are represented here today. It's not easy to be a person with disability living in this country. So, what do you know about inclusion? What do you know about inclusion? Suppose you sabe, good on you. If you don't know, it's just love. That's inclusion. Love you. Yes, people are opinion. So look, they are strong, they are here. She's on a wheelchair. She was an athlete. That young lady there on a wheelchair. You know, she's an athlete. But she's there and she's perseverant. She's here. She's listening to every and then I tell you, youth with disability, they could be very vulnerable. If you're a girl with disability, you're 4 times vulnerable to abuse. All right, so youths today, remember to create that enabling environment for them to be part of you and you part of them. And you can't take advice from anybody else to help them. They will tell you what they want. Talk to them. And they'll tell you. And they can be moderators. They can be peacemakers. Because, you know, you play by Paitigo camp because you have 2 legs, 2 arms. You know, you can look. they can sit there and they just watch and see, and they have a lot of wisdom. And when you include them, they can calm you down. You know, so I'm speaking this way because finally I'd like to take the comment from our brother from Aroma. I like your story. It's beautiful. Yeah. All lapun bela yumi all stop. Intergeneration and yumi stop. I'm now over 50, but I lost my sight when I was 23. And I started advocating for rights of persons with disabilities, but not just talking. It was through action. And this iron lady sitting here next to me made disability visible once upon a time through the first policy on disability in the country. And you talk about activism and empowerment. She actually empowered us through creating the opportunity through that policy and funding disability sports now Narapla program. And it empowered me, and that's why I'm sitting here today. So this is the leader.
Thank you, but you inspire me, Ben, all the time.
Yes, we're talking now. So you see, this is important for us to understand, youth, that you learn from, you know, the elderly. You learn him, lol narapla big pla lo you, all good pla mana, you kiss him good. Planti man is a tokol sem, kaya bloating thing. Good pla longen, you kiss him. No good longen, so you scale him. All right, so you see, you responsible action below you, my friend. I've got young teenagers all picking in one place stop here. All right? And even though me separated lo mama, but I'm a responsible father to my children. And I ensure that they're with their mother or they are with me. And at least they have to go to school. When in relationship, emol yang tupla yang pelaman marry. I know, and at least I am talking to them. Pasin blow harim talk and big plus something. You need to listen. You need to be a good listener. Not just a good listener, but an active listener. You hear him talk, now you make him. Now you become a role model to somebody. Talk me harim lo ya, you pula talk sem. You emul values blah blah. So I want to be changed. So I want to be loved. I want to be this. Respect. You need to walk the talk. You young pula mana, you got all get a strong. Mi pula lapun, mi pula baikam na look lo you. One pula fighting man. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not easy to be a person with disability living in society, but when abuse comes, this, especially young girls with disability, their condition, it's an aggravated condition. They're traumatized, nervous. So let us all care for each other, for everyone else. If you have an organization here with the youth, please be inclusive, include them, let them speak their minds, their voices, and we're all here to help each other. And I would like to repeat here that please, that budget for youth forums like this must be put down in this paper for our NEC to look at, so that youth, you are the future for this nation. Now suppose you plan on lining this or something also. This country is going to go to the dogs. This country is going to go to who? Shut by look longan. You play it somewhere. I'll end it that way, so let me give him a narapla commentator. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Ben is the president for the Disability Association. Again, I want to thank you for the work you are doing, and also want to emphasize that to the young people, we must look into inclusivity, include our disability people also in whatever activism we are doing. Thank you. We'll go to the next commentator. You're also free to ask questions to the panelists here regarding the discussions. So we'll ask the next commentator. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Immaculate. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here, and thank the panelists. I believe you pretty much covered it very well, and I'd like to commend Yana and David on their focus on the values, and that's something that I just wanted to add to the conversation today. Firstly, an observance I made. So we talked about values and we shared our values, and then we were told to break off for lunch. And I was observing from the back, and we are saying we're activists, so we're trying to get into that space of activism. And Mr. Ben was just seated here, and everybody just walked right past him and walked all the way out until the room was pretty much empty. And I walked over to him, and the only person who acknowledged him was somebody similar to him who is with an impairment. I'd like to use the word impairment. Impairment because the disability word that we've been using can be quite discriminating if you really think about it. When we say disability, we assuming that they can't do anything else that the normal person can do. So I'd like to use the word impairment. So another person with impairments came and approached him and said, let's go for lunch. So there we go, lesson 101 for all of us in this room. Okay, so I believe, so going on from there, I believe that those of us who want to work in this space have to have the integrity, they have to have humility, and the passion. That's very important. So, for example, I come from the government sector, Department of Justice, and I've seen a lot of these things happening with the people working in this space. Say we're going for a workshop, so they say, oh, I'll give you a free t-shirt, love, so you may need logo. Chance t-shirt, okay, good. And then some say, oh, there's going to be lunch, we should just go. So they go. And these are the people who are working in key organizations who we are supposed to drive change, and we have this attitude. So I just want to encourage the youths, you're not leaders of tomorrow, you are leaders of today. And as you're working in this space, you think about what you're in it for. So why are you here today is something that you need to ask yourself. So I was just reading a book written by Michelle Obama, and went on to see a documentary, and she said, you just got on a whole new track. She told the youths, today you're on a whole new track, being empowered with all the information sharing here in this room. You're on a whole new track. You're creating a new track. So it must be different as of today. We cannot achieve something different by doing the same thing, like David rightfully said. And so that is something that I'm very passionate about. It's about taking radical responsibility today, making that radical change, taking that radical action, taking that radical campaign. So my passion, I'll just share a bit. My mother worked in this space as a social worker, community advisor for 38 years. I used to go to her office and sit under the table when they had meetings and there was no babysitter. And I would listen to the conversations as I grew. And now I'm sitting at the same table with some of those people having that conversation. And the story hasn't changed that much, really. The GBV story hasn't changed that much. So what are we going to do is the challenge now. So what is the big change now with GBV, I believe, is the introduction of technology, TV, radio, phones, internet. They've brought about behavioral change together with the merging of diverse customs that's giving birth to, should I say, contemporary behavior. And we are using culture as an excuse. Some of us can't even speak our language, right? Yeah, so as I was thinking yesterday, what will the youth live with after this session is something very important that those of us who are already working in this space need to impart to our youth today. And we've done very well so far in this session, so thank you to everyone else. But the driving of values is very important because some of us, maybe we are not very outspoken, not very outgoing, but when you have the right values and you work in a space or in an organization, you can be able to institutionalize those values. And we can be able to change those unjust systems, processes, actions, decisions that have been made. So we ask the question, why is it that even though all these years we've been advocating, the statistics keep on rising, the crimes get worse? where is the disconnection? That's our challenge now, youths working in this space, to research best practice, to dig deeper and address the root causes. We've been using the human rights-based approach, a donor language, a donor concept that came in with colonialism, really, if you look at the development process history. And even though human rights-based approach is a very good approach, there's still gray areas. And this is where justice-based approach comes in. And in the law and justice sector, we are now working as the chairperson for the law and justice sector, JESI community of practice. We are now doing new normal stuff. So addressing the gray areas in the human rights-based approach with the justice lenses. So we are looking at root causes, what is creating GBV, and we're trying to inform decisions with the collection of data. So those are the little things that we're doing in our spaces. Nevertheless, I still believe, and they should be highly recommended from here, taken to the main meeting, is that we need that coordinating mechanism, and a very strong one, to coordinate everything that the NGOs are doing, CSOs are doing, the government is doing, collect the data, research into it, and get qualitative data. Right now we have a lot of good quantitative data, figures, statistics, but we need to dig deeper and find out why we're getting those statistics. We don't really, it's not rich in PNG yet, and that's an area that we need to explore. And as youths now, today, leaders of today, this is an area that I'm challenging you to look into and help us. You know, let's come up with that synergy between us who have been doing this and you coming in to do this. Let's do this together and research what we can do with justice-based approach. So I have a lot of notes here, but I think I've pretty much covered that. And I come from the same place. I'm from Aroma as well, so David, thank you for that. And we have some very good customs and culture that Dame Carol Kidu was rightfully saying, that let's go back and look at those good things and let's work on those good things. Yeah, so I think that's for me to no questions, but the panel was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, your turn.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizers, the ministers, former Minister Dem Carol Kidu, the panelists, and everyone in the room. And the special one goes to our friends here. I'll start with David. I'll come down this way. And I'll start with commenting on your presentation this afternoon. So when I saw David walking in this morning, the last session, as soon as he took the stage, I was wondering, did I ever see this face somewhere? I was, thinking about where did I saw this face, until when you, did a presentation, I could, recall that we once were youth activists before. So I'm happy to see you today. It's good that we have, come to this, summit, and we are meeting each other, and maybe we share some ideas what we have been doing all through these years. I think for now, like, we are hiding in our own corners and doing what we are doing, but we are not being heard. So maybe now is the time for us to be heard. And I have a question for you. I know there is a lot of youth development programs in the country. And like Tacy said, the data is not showing out. There's a lot of good programs, happening in the country. So if Youth Council can map out the programs, the youth development programs in the country, and coordinate it well so that we can have an effective voice for young people. And very thankful for all your presentation, from the experiences as well as Hannah and the other presenter Mary, all and them Carol Kidu, all those experiences are real experiences, and it is very empowering for our young people today sitting in here, and also for us youth workers. I mean, it's about time that, as our team says, let's end the violence today. So young people, let's not waste the time, because the time is not waiting for you. You have to do it now to end it. It might be, too late tomorrow. I have another question for them, Carol Kidu. I was hoping if our current parliamentarians should be here so that I could ask this question, but since they're not here, I'll just address this question to you. Is it possible that the Lookout in Pikinini Act can be reviewed? If it's possible, then can the government of the day can review the LPA and have some penalties for parents who are abusing children physically? I'm saying this because as a child counselor at Family Support Center, it's been a challenge. I sometimes feel like giving up as a youth worker, because children are speechless, voiceless. When it comes to decision making from the authorities level, the child's voice is not being heard. It's not heard. So can it be heard today? So if it's possible, that can it be done? We want to see the change after this summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Very powerful. So from the commentators, we had Ben, Tacy, and Linda speaking. They've mentioned inclusivity, about disability in the work that we are doing. Also, Tacy mentioned about justice-based approach we should be taking instead of a human rights approach. And Linda's mentioned about coordination with the youth. And a direct question to David. We are running out of time, but please, can you answer how the Youth Council can coordinate youth in the country to address this? I'll give you a minute. And after that, a question directed to Dame Carol Kidu on a question about the review of the Lookout in Pikinini Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, our commentators. The question on can the Youth Council drive their programs? So working for National Youth Development Authority, it's a mammoth task, like I said. We've only established 12 districts and 38 local youth development councils. In the current structure, the youth associations at the ward level form the local youth development council. The local youth development councils then form the district youth development council, and the district youth development councils form the provincial youth development councils. And the provincial youth development councils form the National Youth Forum under the new National Youth Development Authority Act 2014. That piece of legislation translates that the council has to be an independent voice, which is non-politicized and cannot entertain bureaucratic red tapes. So the councils are a structure of leading youth voice, but the direction in which we are heading towards is the LAB's National Youth Policy 2007 to 2017, which went through a review, and we now have the National Youth Policy 2020 to 2030, which is also at the same time when the SDGs expire. And so the National Youth Policy is now coordinated by the National Youth Development Authority. Currently, as we speak, the Highlands region is preparing for the interpretation of the National Youth Policy this week. So that will continue to other regions, NGI and more master region. I just returned from Alota after interpreting the National Youth Policy. So from those, from the strategic level, which is the integrated development plans at the provincial level, should include youth programs. But at the district level, we have the 5-year youth development plans, which the National Youth Development Authority will have to work with your DDA, and that can only be driven by political will. So if your politicians are sleeping from their slumber, wake them up, tell them that we have to start working today. And one thing that can be the vehicle to drive that is by reviewing the Organic Law on Provincial and Local Government Act 2014 to make sure that the space for young people is included. Even though we acknowledge other youth organizations in existence, we encourage that through the youth councils, you can affiliate as an youth affiliated member to the youth council so that your programs can be channeled through. One thing that we also encourage is that also be involved in the processes of consultation, planning, implementation, and reviews of policies. Many times youth jump up and down on social media critiquing us. We are only a staff of 52, looking after 22 provinces, 89 districts, and 100,000 something LLGs and wards. It's a mammoth task, but it's about holding ourselves accountable as well. You in this room, what's your role to play when you go back again? So it's our job to grow, not in height, but with knowledge, and gather as much information as you could to gauge your level of interventions wherever you are from and about influencing that power. So I think that's the response I can give of how can the youth councils, but also another response in addition to that is that we cannot wait for the youth councils to be established. Otherwise, we will wait until who knows. But time to work is now. So start reaching out, start dialoguing. Communication mediums are there. Always reach out and let's stop complaining, start working. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We'll have Tim answer the last question and we should wrap up.
Okay, thanks. Excellent question, and also I'd like to comment very briefly on Tassiersand. I'm really pleased to hear that you're working on a justice approach rather than an international human rights approach. And this does not mean that we are compromising the concept of rights. I think it's a really important move, because when you enforce individualistic human rights in communal societies, you put the individuals in conflict with their communities. And there should be perhaps some deep research done into whether this has had an influence in the breakdown of society. So that's a really pleasing thing for me to hear, because I've been talking that talk for a long time, that implementing individualistic human rights on top of a communal society can be very damaging and can actually put people in danger. So thank you, that's really pleasing, and keep at it. The other one, of course, yeah, laws and policies should be reviewed after a 5-year period. But it's not happening regularly in Papua New Guinea. Unfortunately, with the change in the way politics is here, members have become project deliverers rather than legislators and policymakers. And the only way that that can be changed is by the members themselves. And so, but if you get some lobbying from public, eventually maybe it will be heard. Because the primary role of a parliamentarian is a policymaker and a legislator, should not be delivering projects and taking over the job of the public service. So yes, call for that in your resolutions here. Call for a review of the Lookout Impunity Act. It, of course, would be community development in partnership with Department of Justice and Attorney General. And just to add at the end, to add to your knowledge on this, as a nation, our ministers in the past have happily signed off on all sorts of international conventions. They are legally binding conventions, and those here who can find out more about them do, because you can use these tools to hold members of parliament accountable. Now, they are legally binding, and when our ministers sign them off, the international conventions, CRC, CRDP, the Rights of Persons with Disability, or CEDAW, all of these things, ICPD, when we sign them off, we are making a legal commitment that we will adjust our national laws to comply. Unless we make a reservation, but none of our ministers have ever made reservations. So please, as young people who want to lead change, really get yourselves informed. What are the international conventions we've been? What are our laws? And how can they be changed? Because it's only when you lobby and you advocate and you get in under people's skin and annoy them that the change will happen. Thank you very much. Very good questions.
Thank you. So we'll wrap our session. I'll apologize. I'm not going to give you space to ask questions. There's going to be a main session in the main summit, so you are free to attend the summit and then ask. By then, your politicians will be there, so when you ask, you'll direct the questions to them. So I'll wrap it up with today's panelists, and I'll thank our panelists here for your time, for your expertise, for your experience, our commentators for very good comments and the work you are doing, and the audience. So to wrap up, the outcomes for this session is to look back to history and compare what's been done, what's acceptable in the past, what's not acceptable in the past, and combine it with what you are doing today. And for the youth, it's you who are going to change this country. And it's upon you to make that change. So stand up, speak up, and take your spaces. Learn from your elders, be wise, listen, and collaborate with our formers who've done this work. There are many, like Ben sitting here, and a lot, Mary here, who've done a lot in their spaces. Collaborate with them, learn from them. Also, we've asked for reforms in the structures and systems we have in addressing gender-based violence, but specifically the youth approach, and accountability, of course, and Dame has mentioned about informing yourself with current acts and laws and conventions that our leaders are signing, so you take them accountable on that. And with that, I'll wrap up this session and close it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. A big thank you to all our panelists and to Immaculate for doing a great job moderating this session. Thank you so much for being part of this, making your time to come out on a Sunday to be part of our event. I'm sure the young people took a lot from this session. So you may exit the stage as well. So what we'll do now is we'll go straight into our final session for the day because of time. So instead of doing like a networking break, we'll go straight into that session. But before that, how's everyone? Energy levels? Great? Yes? Who? Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. Stretch. Okay. You can stretch. All right. Everyone stretched? Okay, ready? Yes? Hi, hi. Hello, hello. Hi, hello. Hello, hi. Okay, you guys are awake. You may take your seats. All right, so for our next session, this is an important session, so I need you all to be very alert and ready to also contribute, okay? So it's our final session on developing the youth statement, the youth outcome statement. So we're gonna have a chair, and then we'll have 4 speakers and 1 commentator here with us today, okay? So I'll just introduce to you our panelists for today. I'll start with our moderator. Okay, so first, our moderator for the session on developing the statement is Mr. Noah Vada, who is the chair of the NCDC GBV Task Force Technical Working Group, and he is also the legal counsel for the Motu Koita Assembly. So please give him a round of applause. So our first speaker is Ms. Jackie Joseph, who is the CEO and co-founder of Equal Playing Field, focusing on GBV primary prevention. Our third speaker for this session is Ms. Janet Cabo, who is the Acting Executive Director for YWCA PNG. So for those of you who don't know what YWCA stands for, YWCA is the Young Women's Christian Association. Our next speaker for this session is Ms. Trish Chua, who is the founder of the End the Silence campaign. She is a college student and a young woman who's an activist calling for an end to GBV. So you know of the protests that were happening earlier this year. Ms. Chua is the one who has been behind those protests. So, and finally, we have Ms. Natasha Kasa, who is a principal lawyer at family law for family law at the Public Solicitor's Office. So this is your moderator, and these are your panelists for this session. And our commentator for this session is Mr. Gilbert Gora, who is from the Evangelical Lutheran Provincial, he's the Evangelical Lutheran Provincial Youth Coordinator. Okay, So he's going to be in front where the commentators are. I will now hand it over to our chair for this session.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, this is the last session, so we'll try and muscle right through it, but at the same time try to get as much quality output from the folks up here as well. I'm very excited to be here. The work I do is with the NCD GBV task force. So I co-chair the technical working group, which is a group of individuals representing stakeholders from the task force. And we advise the NCDC, the National Capital District Commission, which is, for those of you who've come from the provinces, if you don't know, that is the provincial government for the city of Port Moresby. And we advise from everything from legal and policy matters across to operations, administration affairs, and all of this stuff. And so I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, but I see a lot of unfamiliar faces in the room as well. I'll try and get to know all of you after this event. And yeah, before I start, how many of you here are under the age of 30? Can you raise your hands? Wow, that's a lot. All right, before I start, all right, I'm under 30 as well. This is my last year of being under 30. But for those of you, especially on the young side, I want to apologize to all of you. Right, my generation and the generations before me have let you guys down. We've let you guys down. And events like this are a chance for us to have an open dialogue. For you guys to be aware of the mistakes we've made, the victories we've had, and more importantly, what needs to be done. The mantle that you need to carry forward. So, and I'm very privileged to share this stage with amazing panelists and commentator. And without further ado, I'm going to get right into the discussions. So I can see you're all sitting up and excited now. I want to start with a why all the time. Hey, why are you here? And so I think I've given you that answer. And based on the responses you get from the next 30 minutes, I hope you take that back to your organizations, to your provinces, and we can fix this problem. I seriously believe we can fix this problem. It had a starting point and it can have an ending point. It is not perpetual or endless. It's a cycle that can be broken. And so I genuinely believe that. And I'm very excited that you're all here. Let's get straight to it. So I'm going to start with you, Jackie. You are the CEO of the Equal Playing Field, and I think this question makes a lot of sense for me to ask you. While schools are meant to be safe and supportive environments, we know that children and adolescents experience violence in schools at the hands of peers as well as teachers. How do we make schools safe for all children and adolescents and hold teachers accountable for providing and ensuring this? So yeah, that question straight off the bat, this deals with young people, so I thought I'd ask that. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Noel. So by me start off one time describing just a little bit of the work that Equal Playing Field does, and then connecting Golo, how can we make our schools safer for our kids? And when we're talking about kids, we're talking about obviously the age range where we define kids. We're also talking about those who are soon going to enter this world and are going to enter our schools as well. So within the workspace that MIPLA Woklongem, big focus is on delivering respectful relationship education. So There are messages such as setting your boundaries. There are messages on how you can have empathy on others. There are messages about how you throw tok, how on narapla by kisim. And so when we are time tok, you must tok way man by kisim. So you miss a line more picking or lislakain. Also, me pesa tok lol violence and abuse as well, because planet time also more picking time or look. Me pa tok lol picking so if you're looking lislakain or something come up, that's known as violence and abuse. And so I'll be understanding more different 5 types of violence that a child can go through. And so throughout the work me make him, I think there are a lot of variables. So time we talk variables, we talk also there are different influences that happens in the life of a child, and especially when they expose themselves in the environment of a school setting, where it makes it even worse for the child. And so in the case of us working at schools, we found that there's been a lot of success in terms of time mipa or one time or picking it or helping people understand what a respectful relationship is. And especially in our initial phases, this is right back in 2014 when we started seeing results. And so we started interviewing some of the kids. Now, time talk one time, I'm talking me also. When I started this program, I used to be really bullied by my classmates. But since we all started on this program, a lot of my friends, they don't bully me anymore. And this kid he was smaller than everybody else. And so he started realizing that there were results in that program. So it was an indication that when children are learning things, they're able to demonstrate that. Another girl told me where she mentioned, when I started this program, at first I didn't know that describing was a bad thing, but now I know that when you describe other people, it's not a good thing. And so these results are showing us that children do have the ability to change certain behavior, time lining what is right and what is wrong. What we have found, though, is that just for you to teach a child respectful relationship education is not enough if there isn't a culture or an environment supporting this child. Say, for example, if the child is educated and knows what is respectful and what isn't, but if they're in a school environment where the teacher is calling them names, that doesn't help the situation. Or if they're returning back to a home where they're experiencing violence and abuse, that doesn't even help the situation at all. And so for us as an organization, it's a lot of this we've been learning throughout the process as well. We didn't get all this overnight. It's a process that we've come to learn on how to approach it. And so we've come up with what we call our Safe Schools framework, supported with the work that UNICEF has done. And that is looking at standards that schools can maintain or they can keep to ensure that they are a child-safe school. And some of those standards would be such as a referral pathway. Currently, lo country bluyumi, mi pa naga referral pathway, which means that tamol pikini bluyumi tamol experiencing violence and abuse. You know, had formal process. Lo or teacher by survey one more by making. In fact, suppose you may look out in Pikini Act bluyumi. It does state that if you are somebody who has a role that directly works with a child, you have a mandatory responsibility to report that abuse. Our teachers, they don't know that yet. And they're not reporting these cases. And throughout our experience, Tamipla working in all schools, there's so many cases of child abuse cases. And our children are not getting all the help they need. And that's one of the big concerns that we as an organization, we have. And so part of that standard, one of those standards would be maintaining a referral pathway that teachers know what to do when a child comes and reports. Another standard would be code of conduct for a teacher. So a teacher knows that there might be a child experiencing violence and abuse at home or maybe in the community, and there are some signs that a child can show that they are going through abuse. And if the teacher is trained, they can tell that. Another would be infrastructure or physical environment or school. Maybe the toilets have really dark lighting there, and girls maybe will feel really unsafe to go to use the bathrooms. That's also a standard as well, that schools need to ensure that there's a physical environment blongol is not causing any harm to a child. Now, there are lots of formal other standards that I may not have time to mention, but we do have standards where you can be able to help protect the child when the child is at school. So I think by me stop really.
Jackie, we'll just stay on you, and I just want to ask if you can give probably one example of each, an immediate, medium, and a long-term priority at the national level to address GBV in the context of schools. What would those be? Like something immediate, something medium-term, and something long-term. When I do these sessions, I want to be very practical, so I want to tease out practical suggestions. So yeah, what would be your suggestions for GBV in the context of schools?
So there are different ways to address gender-based violence in the country. So for us as an organization, MIPLA Work Law Prevention SIDA, there are other organizations, we all Work Law Frontliner, where they're looking after people who are being affected by gender-based violence. So for us, it's on the prevention end, such as what do we do to prevent violence from happening? And so I think we have a lot of good laws that are there. One big problem we have in our country is the implementation gap of it. The laws are there. They're telling us what we need to do. And so if I had to narrow down to the work area that MIPLA Work Long am, in our country, there's absolutely no specialized service for our children. No specialized services, which means when I have a child and I have a abuse case, really serious abuse case, I refer it to welfare. I try to coordinate, but that's as far as it'll get. The child won't really get all the help that they need. And we know that when a child goes through abuse, when they're very young, that affects them the whole lifetime. And they need to get counseling, they need services. And so for me, an immediate priority would be to start working on specialized child services, because what kind of country are we trying to create? Or what kind of leaders are we going to have in the future if these children are going to be abused and not get the help that they need? That's serious. And so I'd like to say one immediate priority that we should have is to ensure that we've got specialized services so that these children who are going through this abuse, as we speak, there are children being abused right now, that there's places to go. And I know we can't get there overnight, but there are steps that we can take, and such as what I've just mentioned, the 8 standards that a school can maintain to ensure that it's a child-safe school are one of those ways that we can start working. You've been talking more, it's a big process, there's a lot of funding that's needed. No, there's places that we can start from.
Thank you, Jackie. All right, we'll zap across to Natasha. I think Jackie's hit on a number of points around the legal responses or the implementation of legal responses. Natasha, you work for the Office of Public Solicitor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know the functions of the Office of Public Solicitor, they have 2 very unique functions. First and foremost, they are the public defender. So in any criminal case, if an accused needs a lawyer, the state provides a lawyer through the Office of the Public Solicitor. But they also have another function, and that is providing legal aid for civil matters. Natasha heads the family law section of the Office of Public Solicitor, so I imagine it's a mixture of both. But on the civil end of the scale, the Office of Public Solicitor, and I have a lot of friends who are lawyers who work there. From their experiences, I know that on the other scale, the Office of Public Solicitor deals with a lot of the survivor-based aspects of GBV. It's interesting because on the other side of the office, they deal with the perpetrators, and they have to act for the perpetrators in the criminal sense. It's a very important constitutional duty to carry out that function. It's a very important office. So my question to you, Natasha, would be, healthy, equal, and violence-free relationships are central to ensuring sexual and reproductive health and rights for all. How can we work with young people to foster these types of relationships for their and society's long-term benefit? Probably answer the question in the context of the work you're doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, moderator. Well, in the context of what I'm doing, basically I'll give like the moderator has explained about Public Solicitor's Office. So we represent the perpetrators as well, but don't get mixed up. We also have a fine line between representing the perpetrators and assisting the survivors. So from the section that I'm heading, we specifically assist the survivors and all family law related matters. Now, when it comes to answering this question on ensuring sexual and reproductive health and rights of all, especially at a young age, I'm first of all going to answer this question in the criminal aspect. I've been practicing as a criminal lawyer for the past 6 years as well. And so I think it's important that most of our young generation today do not know the rights under the criminal code, sorry, not the rights, but the penalties in place under the criminal code. That is, they have the right to have friendships, they have the right to have sex and go on testing this. As young people, you know, we would like to test these things, right? But you also have to know the legal age. And most times, you'll hear cases, sexual abuses, reported because the victim, or should I say the survivor, is under the age of 16. And so maybe they're just youths. The perpetrator or the boyfriend is just 19 years old in grade 12 or grade 11, and the young girl is just in grade 9, around 15, and then they decided to go on for an experiment and they had sex. And then the parents of the boy, you know, gets, sorry, not the boy, but the girl gets upset about this because the child is now pregnant, early pregnancy, and so they would lay a complaint at the police station. So what happens? They really want to have the relationship, but you know, the law says you cannot have, you cannot sexually penetrate a child or a girl under the age of 16. So it goes before the criminal justice system. So as youths, you must know that yes, you can experiment, but those rights are there. I mean, not the rights, those penalties are there. And so you must, I do not think in schools, law studies skills really explain these penalties to the youth, so you know that the choices that you're making, there's consequences for it as well. And most times it's, I would say, it involves family. Sometimes the girl is forced into having sex, yes, and that becomes an issue. So what I'm trying to get here is that it's important for young people to know the laws in place. They can also enjoy the relationships, but they must know when is the right time for them to have, you know, go outside, have sex, do all these things responsibly. Because if you want to take, you know, youths, you want to be leaders, you also have to take responsibility of your actions. And that's one of the important things. I think most communities, the society do not really understand that the provision in the criminal code, and awareness must be made in that aspect.
I'll probably get up and grab that mic. All right, we'll stay on you, Natasha. I asked the same question to Jackie, and I'll probably ask you the same thing. But yeah, on the other side of it, I would say we have situations where young people don't exactly know what their rights are. And so you have a scenario where grade 10, 11, you have a scenario where grade 10, 11, 12 kids are arrested by police, and then the pictures are taken and put on Post Courier. You can see their faces and their uniforms and all of that. And just adding to Natasha's point on education, there are very clear rules that are set out in our laws that protect young people, protect the right to privacy, it protects the rights of any accused, not just young people who are accused. You have a right to not answer a question. You have a right to, in Hollywood, you'll often hear them say, you have a right to remain silent. Well, that simply means you have a right not to be forced by the police to make an incriminating statement against yourself. You have a right to a lawyer. You have a right to, in the case of young people, the presence of a guardian or a parent. And so that's what Natasha is alluding to in terms of education. But I'll throw it back to you, Natasha. Again, what are the immediate, medium-term, and long-term priorities at a national level to address and prevent GBV from the context of young people generally and their legal rights and awareness of these rights? Yeah, I want to get your views on that. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. In relation to, I'm going to answer this in two aspects, one for young people and I think women and girls as a whole. So, as we speak, the reason why we're here is because of the national strategy to address gender-based violence 2016 to 2012, yes, 25, that is, yes. So when this strategy was implemented, now it gave powers to the, or it ensured, not powers, but it ensured that government departments, NGOs, the country as a whole tried to address the issue of GBV. Now, when you look at government departments, you see the creation of family FSV units in the police. This is a result of this strategy. You see the family law section now that I'm heading in the public solicitor's office. This is a result of that strategy. The government is trying to make sure that the government agencies that are addressing these issues must have specific sections to really implement or address these issues. So that is why we have all these mechanisms in place. Now the real question is, as Jackie stated, are we delivering? Are we implementing? We have FSV units here, and I'm pretty sure you have experience when you lay complaints in FSV units. Yes, we have those units. Recently there has been a report compiled by UN, and in collaboration with the Pacific Legal University. It's dated about June 2020, and the report talks about the challenges in investigating, prosecuting family sexual violence in PNG. Now, it's very interesting because one of the challenges is there are mechanisms like I just outlined, FSV units. But one of the things is that there is no organizational approach. You would find that the way they treat an FSV or a gender-based complaint is quite different in all parts of the country. And I say this because recently for the past 2 weeks I've been doing interviews with the FSV because they're referral partners, trying to see if the partnership is good and all. And I spoke with the OIC in Leh, and I was really impressed with what she was doing. When the survivors report domestic violence case, she goes ahead and drafts IPO. And we thank the Department of Justice and Attorney General. They've been also training most of the police personnel on how to draft IPOs. That's what I've also been doing. So we try to ensure that the police, the referral partners can help survivors on the spot. So when I asked the OIC for Lei, she said, oh, when a complaint is laid and I see that she needs a protection, I go ahead and I draft the IPO. And that was the same thing for Kokopo. But Kokopo went on to telling me that when I see that the abuse was within a short period of time, say the same complainant came last month and she said she was assaulted, and then she comes back again this month and say, okay, she was assaulted again, I automatically arrest the perpetrator for domestic violence under the Family Protection Act. And then simultaneously I get an IPO. And then I went to some other FSV unit, which I will not name, and I asked them how they went about, and they said, oh, we do not deal with IPOs. That's something for lawyers to do, so we'd rather refer them back to the public solicitor's office. And then there are reports by our clients that come that, no, we went to the FSV unit or the counter, and then we were told that this is a family issue, so maybe you should go back and discuss this at home. So you see the practice varies. Huh? And I think that is because there is no organizational, there is no standard practice procedure on how to deal with and address GBV cases in the police force or even in any organizations that are dealing or addressing. Because like the public solicitor's office, the public solicitor issued directions that, okay, IPO is a matter of urgency. So you take on any lawyers, take it on. Now, what the government is trying to do is to ensure that the departmental heads issue directions that can actually address it, not just have mechanisms in place, but just issue directions that, look, we need immediate response to GBV. Do not turn these survivors, do not turn these people away. It's such directions given from the organizational head then all the officers down would address it there and then. So it goes to all the, and I think that is one of the immediate priority that should be looked into when it comes to stakeholders, government departments that are addressing GBV. Do they have directives in place within the organization to address this issue? Because most often you hear excuses. Now, excuses is fine. I mean, for example, you come to the Public Services Office and you don't get assistance immediately because they say, oh, we do not have enough lawyers, or Ms. Casa is absent and there's no other person to do the IPO. These are realistic things that you'll face. Again, because we have resource constraint. Now, if the government is concerned about addressing GBV, they should also resource those institutions to address the issue. Because most often the police would say, we don't have fuel to arrest the perpetrator. Well, why not ensure the operational cost for the FSV unit is there? Although we can say there are excuses, if we look back that maybe they need resources, and if the government is serious, those resources must be provided to institutions, departments, stakeholders, to ensure that they implement and deliver. Because I see the issue now is implementation and delivering. Thank you.
I think that's a great response, Natasha. And I completely agree from my own experiences. That is certainly the case. So at the NCD GBV task force, we try to put down a provincial response. We're very blessed to have a political leader in the governor of NCD who is extremely committed to ending GBV. Like when I say extremely committed, I mean extremely committed. Like he will call us on a Sunday to go and meet with him and check. No, what are you up to? You know, Vilupti, what are you up to? You know, it checks all the team members, WhatsApps us in the middle of the night, saying, hey, how's this thing going? We have 110 other parliamentarians, and they need to be performing at that level if we're going to fix this problem. So all roads lead to Waigani, but more importantly, all roads lead to tomorrow and next week. And so the sessions we're going to have tomorrow and on Tuesday, the idea is to arm the parliamentarians. Those few good men who have banded around Governor Pakop, some of them are your governors, your MPs, is to arm them and send them into Parliament with a technical document that is your voice, the voice of the youth, but also the voice of survivors and the voice of the stakeholders like these ladies sitting here who are working every day in the field trying to fix the problems. And hopefully get serious, I'm not going to say government, serious intergovernmental action. The action has to happen at the parliamentary level, at the provincial level, at the district level. We've got to decide how DSIPs are spent to support these programs, how PSIPs spent in the provinces, provincial budgets are spent, how national funds are spent to support these programs. And so I sound like I'm concluding this event. I'm not. We still have two people to speak, so I'm going to get straight to that. But I'm very excited with how the discussion's going, and I think you all agree with me that we're having a really good discussion. Now, I'm going to jump straight to Janet. Janet is from the YWCA. Janet, your question is, we know that many girls do not choose when and with whom to have sex. Yet stigma and discrimination against early pregnancy among adolescent girls and unmarried women remain strong, including interruption of their education. What are the main challenges to adolescent girls achieving their sexual and reproductive health and rights? And you can answer from as many contexts as you want. This is a very broad and interesting question. It's a question that broke the US elections, believe it or not. Joe Biden was elected on a very strong policy around reproductive rights. If you didn't know that, Donald Trump lost his election because he couldn't convince the young people that he could protect their reproductive rights, young girls. And so there you have it. This is something that moves and shakes the world. And we have Janet to answer that question. Yeah, don't feel pressure, Janet.
Well, thank you, moderator, and everyone in the room. Well, firstly, I think we know, and if you look at family violence or domestic violence, we have to come back to the basis. And the basis means that it's the family unit or the family institution, how we bring up our children. And for young youths today, you're going to be the next parent or you are the next parent. So the challenge would be, how do you bring up your child? And if you bring up your child in the manner that she's able to respect herself, he is able to respect himself, then you will find that these issues we're facing as violence maybe will be limited, or definitely we want to erase. So for tomorrow's generation and today's generation, it comes back to that family institution. For many of us, we would have seen that our parents had challenges because maybe they had their family too young. Like now, we're having children when you're probably in grade 10, you graduated, you're experiencing, so you have children. You're not prepared for that child. You haven't planned that you have a child. So that became a challenge, and in that developed violence, because both parents are not prepared for it. In all contexts, mainly financially. And that leads to teaching the child that violence is norm. It's not norm. So it comes back to that really, really important thing in life where all us parents have to know whether we want to have the children or we don't. Or we should not take sex as a fun and game, a test to know. Someone was talking about passion. Now this is a really good one. And also the legal law says, so this really tests your passion. So you're going to really suffer in silence if you're overage, right? So this is now the test of passion. So for being young, and I think which youth we are teaching today, I've told them that, sorry to say, but today, to even have a wife, to even have a husband, to even have a child, it's budgeted for. It's a budget line. Whether you like it or not, I like it or not, it's budgeted for. So if you're going to have 2, 3, or even a wife, or 2 wives, 3 husbands, budget that. Because if you're going to avoid violence, then that's the only way to go. Today, your life is revolved around a budget, whether we like it or not. You can have education to the next level. The reality is there. But to go back also to what the question says on the reproductive health, yes, it's very important. In our programs, we teach reproductive health. Why? Because if you're a young person that gets pregnant, especially women, you know your body cannot take it. And that's the reality. Maybe that's one of the main reasons why we have cancer at very early ages, because your body is enlarged to a level that your body cannot take. And it cannot do with the functions that it's supposed to be as a mother, because you're not old enough. Your body hasn't grown to the capacity it can take. These are serious things. Even for men, this is what you've got to really, really know about. It's okay to have sex. It's fun, maybe. But then what are you doing to your partner is the question. That's the reality you're faced with. Many men, how much information do we know about cancer? We don't. And the reality is, the male cells, the cancer cells is carried by men. Do many of you men know that? So imagine how many times you force your female partner to have sex. How many cancer cells are you giving the woman that you're having sex with? So reproductive health is very, very important. Even for young people, when you have reproductive health, please learn as much as you can, because it is a very, very important factor in many, many lives today, especially with food that you eat, the social lives that we live, the health information that you need to know as a young person so that it guides you in the choices you make are very important. Many of us don't, and this is where we get into a lot of trouble. And also going back to where the age group, there's nothing wrong with having a relationship. But then it's also having the the passion to also say, no, I cannot make you suffer. And the other thing, sometimes I even tell children and youth on my street or anywhere, when you do these things at young ages, is it because you want to hold down the person? But why? If you're both going to have dreams and goals, support that dream and goal as a boyfriend, as a girlfriend, as a fiancé. Support each other until you're old enough. And always remember, all those dreams and goals come with budget. Including your passion, it comes with budget. For most, consider your health to be able to keep our generation alive, and for the intergenerational leadership, knowledge, information to continue. Because if we lose a generation in between, then who passes on the information from the next generation to the next generation? So with that, thank you very much.
Jana, we'll stay on you. Very quickly, what's one immediate, one medium, and one long-term priority at the national level you would think is necessary? So if I had the health minister here tomorrow, which he will be here tomorrow, and I will talk to him, what do you want me to tell him in terms of reproductive health? What should be his top 3 priorities, immediate, medium-term, and long-term, in terms of safeguarding reproductive health or improving reproductive health policy and implementation, especially for young people?
Thank you. Including that and adding to what Jackie and also Natasha said, one thing I would encourage is that for a long term, I would like to see that teachers are trained to be able to read characters of children that go through abuse. And with that training, that also helps them to deliver. We had a program 3 years ago, which is the RRR, and that was the Respects, Rights, and Resilience. In that program, we taught children about all issues, and also including reproductive health. We found that the teachers had difficulty in delivering this information because they were embarrassed to talk about topics, especially in reproductive health. If teachers are taught this information from the colleges, or teachers' colleges and teachers' universities they go through, they're able to deal with this without being afraid to develop that because of our cultures and taboos. And that was the reason why a lot of children that came up and said, oh, we have no one to go to and ask for information. But if teachers had this information, they were the next best parent to a parent that could give this information to a child in a language that the child would probably understand. And it will help a lot of the children to understand that. And it'll be an open conversation. What we also found out in one of our workshops is that teachers felt embarrassed. But for teachers that are there and for those of us who deliver information, I'd also like to encourage that today's youth and children are quite well advanced than we are. And there is really nothing to be embarrassed about. The main thing is because of the internet. They have access to internet information, which is not guided. So they have that information that's there. And I also like to add that with this situation we have with youth, there should be an age limitation when we are taking up SIMs for children. It's not there. We don't have that. So if a parent is registering the child for a new phone or a tablet, the child basically has access to everything. There is no age limit. And if you're going to have age limit, even for communication technology and all that, that should be the first one. There should be an age limit if the child, so that their programs are limited and their accesses are limited. And that is one information that is really, really needed too. Secondly, as parents, we feel that giving information on maybe pregnancy and tablets, say use of condoms, and all these things are prohibited. It's like a no-go zone in our tradition, in our culture. But when you think about today and the children exploring, especially under alcohol, drugs, then for a parent, if you're going to be ignorant, it's sorry to say that your child will explore to the limits you do not want to know about. And for us working in this kind of field, the stories we hear are really, really frightening. I can give you an example. There's a 12-year-old boy at 10. He was abused by his own uncle. And he tried to live with it for so long, but he couldn't. So the only way to learn to live with it, he became a sex worker. So he's a male sex worker. He started when he was 12. So that is how scary it is. We talk about women, but then men are suffering just as bad because of ignorance, because of, say, you cannot talk about condoms, you cannot talk about contraceptive pills. There are ways to explain it. You can tell the child that, okay, the disadvantage of explaining this is this, the disadvantage of using this is this. But as parents, we also have to take that responsibility to explain to our children. Not everything is good, but there is a choice to make also as young people. So if you have dreams and goals, these are really important. The other thing I would also maybe recommend on behalf of the legal team is that at police stations, they should also have a section where it's only looked after by women police. And this section can have the lockup as for safekeeping of any person that violates the legal laws, especially if they're underage. Because when they're put into the main ones and they're females, usually they're abused. And if they're young men, even they're locked in the main one, they're also abused. So if we had a separate lockup that is looked after by women police, and these people could be protected, the vulnerable, then this will really help and maybe reduce. In that alone, we need to have the pathway that is able to assist the policewomen that, okay, I can take this section as per the departments that are able to help. And that will help. So to really have a long-term, immediate, I'm not sure about having that immediate solution because this is one really hard issue to deal with, but in the long term, this would be the two that will guide maybe the government and the institutions to build so that we can have solutions to a lot of the issues we face. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Janet, for those insights. And I completely agree with everything you've said. And just to add on, young people, you guys are very powerful. How many of you here studied history in high school? Yeah, so you know the story about World War I, and that led to World War II, and that led to the Cold War. And all the geopolitics we see today is because of those wars. This building was built, APEC House, to manage geopolitics in this region because of all those consequences that happened in World War II and World War I. And World War I was started by a 17-year-old kid, Gavrilo Princip, who took a pistol and shot the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. One teenager acting decisively, in a bad way, but acting decisively changed the whole course of the 20th and 21st century. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful, you have a pretty powerful potential. Not a lot of people realize it, yourselves many times don't realize it too. You got a power to change the world for the better or for the worse, and it starts with personal decisions. And I think that is what Janet's been talking about these last five or 10 minutes. I'll get to Trish. Trish Toa from End the Silence campaign. End the Silence campaign came about. Well, it was always there as an online-based forum of youths mostly, but it really came out to the fold when the late Jeneline Kennedy passed away this year. And that was tough. For those of us living in the city of Port Moresby, that was pretty hardcore. My own experience, I lost one of my best friends to gender-based violence, Ruby Laufer, former Miss PNG. I was one of her chaperones. I was one of her closest friends, one of her course mates at the School of Law at UPNG. I met her at Vision City in the morning, and in the afternoon she was dead. Very, very weird. I haven't gotten over the grief myself, you know. And I speak to the guys here, everybody, but especially the boys here sitting in the males here. We struggle processing grief. I'll probably admit and say I've never processed that grief. Whenever I see a picture of a perpetrator, I'll be all like, one day I'll have my revenge on you, but that's unrealistic. As educated people, big man name game Sawe Lumia. We're all educated people, and as educated people, we use our intellect, our creativity, our voice, our time to fight gender-based violence. And I'm encouraging you guys, boys, think about it that way. Yeah, don't think about it as, oh, I'm fighting sister Lomi, me go fighting him. Use your energy positively, because violence only begets violence. And if you use your energy positively, how do you use it? Well, look no further. These are the suggestions we're making, where the gaps are in the system and where you need to apply your voice, your creativity, your intellect to fix these problems, because you will inherit these. You have already inherited this mess from us because we didn't fix it. And so it's important to have this dialogue. And I'm very happy to have one of your own here, Ms. Trish Toa. So without further ado, Trish, your question. And I think it's right up your alley. As technology, the internet and social media has become more and more part of our everyday lives, along with this, online violence has proliferated. Yet it is often an overlooked form of gender-based violence. Acknowledging we can't stop the spread of technology, what do we need to do? I think that's the question. And as somebody who runs an online social media and online campaigns, I think you'll be the best placed person to answer this question. Trish.
Hello. I'd like to firstly take the opportunity to say thank you to NCDC, the governor, UNFPA for having me here. It's my first time being a panelist. I'm very, very, very nervous, but please bear with me. To your question, technology in my era and this society now, it's become our whole lives almost. We grow up and then we're in high school and then we find that, oh, that's Facebook. Everyone gets on it, posts selfies on a daily, posts everything. And then when we see a fight on the street, people, instead of going to stop it, they take videos and they post it on social media and they go, oh, they're fighting over a guy, look how silly they look how stupid. Please forgive me for my language. But it is stupid. You're a person, a human being, you've got a brain yourself. Wouldn't you at least think, or at least know wrong from right? But then again, it goes down to the household of parents raising your child. We're in this era now where technology is, like I said, our lives. And parents now raising your children should be more aware as to the dangers of technology. I see kids nowadays at the age of, I'd say, at least 6 with a tablet, 7 with a tablet. They're given it to play games and all of that. And they're already getting to know technology at a very, very early age. Although I was born in 2000, I used to play in the garden with mud, play house and all of that. I never really got to it until I was probably 12, 13. And then now I'm at least grown in a way. But I get to see my friends, when coming into this space and speaking vocally about gender-based violence, and actually getting to do something about it physically, and then there's online. I got one of this message from a friend of mine, well, my cousin, sorry. And my younger sister had posted something about her relationship on Facebook, and she screenshotted it to me and she sent it to me, and I think my stepsister is probably like 13. She screenshotted it to me and she sent it to me and she goes, oh, we should probably do something about this. We need to belt her. And I said, We can't do that. That's not how you're supposed to do it. You're here helping me, supporting this thing that we've been going on for months about, and you're trying to belt her for that. How are you supposed to teach her that? Is it you're telling me that it's okay to belt her because she did that? It's difficult. So it goes down to moral standards, really, values and respect at the end of the day. On social media, it's technology, but you're a person of your own. You've got your mind of your own and a brain that is 10 times smarter than a computer itself, you know? So it really goes down to values, morals, your mindset, your beliefs. And these days, it's really hard to make youths come into this space and try to inspire them, because there's a lot of influences out there. And technology contributes to that, to our lives. So I think, to your question, I'd say honestly, it goes down to the person's values in life. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's yeah. I guess it's in line with what Janet was saying, actually, with her question as well. Personal choices are very important. I bet you didn't know that apps like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. So when the guys who create these programs sit down and plan, there's two groups in that room. There's the computer programmers from Facebook, from Twitter, from WhatsApp, Instagram. Well, WhatsApp and Instagram are owned by Facebook. And then the guys sitting next to them are the psychologists. So you have people who are doing the programming, they're designing the app, and then you have people who are advising them, who are experts in how the human brain works. And so every little thing, from the little ding that you hear, the color of the app, there's a reason why there's a red notification, and it's not purple or yellow. There's a reason why all the apps are colored blue. It's designed to go into your brain and take over those receptors that give you mental responses. It triggers oxytocin, so you feel happy. So oxytocin is a chemical in your head that makes you feel happy and excited. It triggers dopamine. It's another chemical in your head that makes you feel very good about yourself. And so when the kids don't have the flex card to buy data, they start getting depressed. Because those apps have now become like a drug. And if you think about it, they have the exact same, they trigger the exact same brain chemicals that buai triggers, that cigarettes trigger. So, do we need to regulate them? Do we need to understand them better? If we're not going to regulate them, do we need to do a lot of education around them? The same way we do education around sex, around pill nut, around cigarettes, because we know these things trigger those parts of our brain that if we don't manage it properly, it becomes addiction. If we don't manage it properly, there are adverse responses like rage and anger, and then violence happens. And so this is a very interesting area. It's an emerging area. Nobody has the answers. We don't know what's going on. 10 years ago, there was no Facebook. My generation, who did high school in 2009, 8, 6, 7, we were the last people to write love letters. Digicel came out when we were in grade 10. And it changed everything. People after us, not writing love letters, they're texting each other. And it's constantly going to evolve. We can't stop it. It is part of the story of human progress. Technology is coming. And the youth are a key demographic that technology influences. And so we're going to have a few Facebook ministers here tomorrow. Honorable Minister for the Police, Brian Kramer. Avid Facebooker is going to be here. So I'm going to have that discussion with him. We're also going to have the Minister for Technology, Information and Communication. We're going to have that discussion Trish, what are your recommendations to these guys? What do you want to see around social media and the use of internet? Do we need education on it, on how young people should responsibly use this? Not just for promoting good, but for just simply not using it for bad. Because there's a lot of that happening right now. There's a lot of that happening with, with revenge porn and with all of these issues that are emerging around technology use, the malicious use of technology by young people. What would be your recommendation to these folks tomorrow?
My recommendation would be, look, technology has both sides, good and bad. There's lots of bad, but there's also lots of good. At the end of the day, it depends on how you use it really. If you're going through a bad day, there's videos on YouTube of cats doing random stuff. Look it up, have a laugh. There's recipes there. Find something on the internet that makes you happy. You don't always have to make it into a bad thing. So my recommendation is see the good in things sometimes. Life is full of bad, but make something good out of it.
All right, sounds great. We're going to head on to the last part of our session, which is I'm going to get some comments from our commentator. Yes, Gilbert. Now I'm going to do this a bit differently. I'm actually going to ask you a question, and you can give a response, but you can also, if you want, direct at least one question because we're short on time to any of our panelists. And your question is the same question I've asked everybody. What are the immediate, medium-term, and long-term priorities at a national level to address and prevent GBV? I want to hear from your perspective, your experiences, the work you're doing up there, and also the information that you've heard and how you've processed it. And what are your thoughts around it, mate? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I will speak on behalf of the church perspective. As for me, I am a youth coordinator. We have 5 programs, five big programs, and the one I will specify and elaborate on that is the stewardship program. In this program, we have plans to make youth and they can have the level of enjoying themselves in the village, in the congregation, or at the district, or at a national level. At all, it all accommodates all the stewardship program. Okay, referring to your question, we have plans. Recently we have plans for the 2021 and 2030 plan, which we are trying to insert some of the programs like gender theology and other issues that are affecting youths. We are looking forward to insert this in this program, and looking forward to that. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to pass the mic along for final comments from each of our panelists. But before I do so, I want us to all give them a round of applause for an excellent session. So I'm going to use that same trick I used on Janet and Trish, which is basically tomorrow we're going to have a lot of parliamentarians here. Our objective is to pack them to the rafters with information, important information, and give them the tools they need to go back into Parliament and pressure the government into making important calls regarding gender-based violence, regarding the role of youth in addressing this issue, and having a holistic approach around ending this, this emergency, this crisis of gender-based violence. And so what would for each of you, what would be the key recommendation? And I'll start with you, Jackie. What would you tell our friends from Waigani when they come tomorrow? There's a couple of us here. There's a rapporteur at the back that will also take note of these things. So your comments are not going to be wasted. We're going to take note of everything, and we're actually going to tell them. So what would you tell them? What's the one thing that you would tell our decision makers tomorrow in terms of improving gender-based violence?
I think I'd base my recommendation around just simply the fact that the future ahead is something very important for us. And the things that we do now will obviously impact what's going to happen later on. And so when we look in the area of GBV, the things that we do now are going to build momentum to the results that we can see in the future. And in the space of GBV, we have the future of this country that depends on what we do now. And so coming from my perspective on working with children, we need to do a lot more with our kids, with our children. There's a lot more services that needs to get in. We've got a population of more than 8 million. In fact, it could be more than that. We don't know. And with that kind of population and having 0 services for children, that really concerns me as a citizen of this country. And so that's something that I will always continue to advocate for, and something that our leaders need to uphold. And just adding that on to, our leaders really need to be role models as well. They need to be able to speak for the concerns of their people, but if they are concerned, they should also role model what they should be doing. We shouldn't have to be talking about things, but in your own home, you're not doing those things. Things don't work that way, and people look at you as well. If you're an advocate for something and you're doing the exact opposite, there's no purpose and there's no meaning. And so I'd like to leave that with those two, where that the future is something very important for us, and we need to do the actions that we can take now, and the fact that we need role models.
Thank you. For me, it would be the age appropriation SEAM guidance to the NECTA, that if they don't have the program, develop it. And the second one would be having the program taught to teachers so that they're able to read characters of our children when they're in school and able to assist them, and also to report to parents that children need assistance. Thirdly, and the most important one, I feel that there should be a section at the police station where it's looked after by police women that can assist juvenile, and especially women and female girls. Thank you.
I've got 2 recommendations. One is to have rapid response to assisting survivors or victims in the moment on a Sunday, because I've found out that no one answers the phone call on a Sunday. And in that moment, when someone's trying to call the police station on a Sunday and no one answers the phone, it's already be too late. I tried ringing the phone on a Sunday to help out my friend. No one picked up. I called G1st, and they were the ones who answered. A security company answered, not the police. So I'm sure Minister Kramer will come up with something with that. The second one is to do it when you're dealing with GBV, you're dealing with people's lives. Do it for the people. Not for your votes. We don't want your money. You're dealing with someone's life. So do it for a good cause.
Thank you. I think I've mentioned my first 2 recommendations already. Most importantly, for directions in the departmental heads dealing with GBV. Those departmental heads should issue directives within their organization. Most importantly, the police commissioner, if there is no directives already on how the standard procedure for dealing with GBV in the police force, that should be there should be directions or practice procedure on that. Secondly, resources. Yes, the organizations that are delivering the service are less, there's not enough resources. I can say I'm the only one in my section right now, so we definitely need to resource these organizations with lawyers, operational cost, whatever it may take if we're serious in ending GBV. And thirdly, I didn't mention that in relation to youth, I think the saying goes, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. So we should start in the schools. There should be education policies on, as a requirement for graduation from primary school all the way to institutions, that they should be participating in youth programs that in collaboration like YWCA, Equal Play Voice Inc. There's a requirement that there should be from primary school before you go to high school. One of the requirements for graduating, you should partake in youth activities. And those, I'm pretty sure those organizations deliver on how to address GBV. So we start from primary school all the way to national institutions. They can assist survivors as well, so they can really appreciate it when they enter the workforce and they can address it. So I think the education also needs to look at policy. They can collaborate with organizations and make it a requirement for students or youths to graduate by attending and be part of those youth programs. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of our session. We've gone past time, so I'll bring it to an end here. Just final remarks. Thank you all for participating in this discussion. In this session, I can see you're all interested. I didn't see anybody walk out, which means you are all engaged in this discussion. I'm very, very happy. If you're here for the next 2 days, you want to have a chat about any of the stuff we've talked about, please feel free to grab me or any of these ladies and have a discussion with us in this beautiful building for over the next 2 days as we do something very important in these next 2 days, and that is work from the bottom up, not from the top down. You got to understand, these politicians, some of them are going to lose votes because they're supporting gender-based violence. We got to support them tomorrow. We got to show up. We got to bring additional, support as much as we can to encourage them to take our voices to the floor of Parliament. It's not a popular topic. It's not something that brings votes for them every year in elections. It's something that costs a lot of money. And there are a lot of people in Waigani who would rather not have this discussion. But it's a discussion that needs to happen. And we need all of your support, especially young people. You know the rule of 10,000 hours. You do something for 10,000 hours, it's in your blood, it's in your DNA, you know this stuff, right? Well, young people, if you start your 10,000 hours now, working on gender-based violence, by the time you're my age or any of these ladies up here, their age, you'll be an expert in this area. You know this stuff back to front. You know how to organize your community. You know how to organize your organization to meet that standard that needs to be met for us to end this problem. So I'm very happy to have youth and young people here. And this session was about youth and young people and all the peripheral issues that we got to deal with in dealing with that theme. And so again, I'd like to thank our panelists up here, our all-female panel. Please give them a round of applause. Our commentator as well for his input on the church side. Please give him a round of applause. And finally to yourselves, thank you very much. All right, Bronwyn, I think I'm done here. Thank you.
Mic check. All right. First of all, thank you so much to the panelists and to No Vada for being the chair of this final panel for today. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our youth event for the National GBV Summit. But of course, it's just the beginning for the bigger summit, which is happening tomorrow and also on Tuesday. As I mentioned earlier, all the discussions from this summit will feed into a youth outcome statement that will be presented in the summit on Tuesday, and then will be included in the overall outcome statement. Okay. So first of all, we'd like to thank our note takers and our rapporteurs who, over the course of today's sessions, captured key recommendations made to the government on behalf of all of us today. Our rapporteurs, David and Salimata, will present the final outcome statement for the youth to the Coalition of Parliamentarians on Tuesday. So before we end, I will read out the first draft of recommendations made throughout the course of today. And of course, after the final discussions, they will sit down, go through them again, and finalize a youth outcome statement as well. Okay. So from this youth side event, the following are the draft recommendations to the government. Number one, the government must commit to funds and human resources to support GBV prevention programs and services, noting that relying on donor funding alone is not sustainable. Number two, youths must be given the space and opportunity to substantively participate and shape decision-making at every level of society. We ask for an amendment of the District Development Act to include provisions for youth. Number three, prevent violence before it begins by prioritizing healthy and non-violent relationships inside the home and community, invest in education system and out of school learning to strengthen teaching and healthy relationships and sexual and reproductive health, support teachers to have the skills and knowledge to recognize and respond to the needs of children and adolescents experiencing violence, and develop and implement uniformed standards for schools to create safe spaces for children. And finally, long-term and sustained government funding for police, justice, medical, social support and counseling services for GBV survivors, and specialist services for children experiencing violence. We ask for measurable, immediate, medium and long-term commitments for comprehensive all-sector support as per the National GBV Strategy for the Education Department, the Health Department, Community Development, Justice and Attorney General, and Finance. So ladies and gentlemen, this is your draft recommendations from today's discussions, which will be finalized for your final outcome statement. With that, I would like to proceed to thanking a few people who have made today possible. So first of all, I'd like to remind you all, this was the pre-summit event for the GBV Summit, funded by the Spotlight Initiative. I would like to thank our partners from the National Capital District Commission, partners from the UN, especially UN Women and UNFPA for leading this, UNICEF. Also a huge thank you to all our CSO, NGO, and youth organization partners who are here with us today. We have The Voice Inc., Equal Playing Field, Belly C, Active City, the Sun Up On Time campaign, PNG Sports Foundation, the PNG Olympic Committee. We had Magna Carta, the Tribal Foundation, the Family Sexual Violence Action Committee, the Family Support Center, the PNG Youth Disability Network, and I hope I didn't miss out anyone else, but to everyone who has made the time to come here, we thank you so much for joining us. Also, a huge thank you to the 24 young people who've flown in from provinces across the 4 regions of Papua New Guinea to be with us also today. Thank you so much for joining us. Your presence is needed, actually needed here with us today. So thank you so much for making time to come and be part of us. They will also be part of the summit over the next 2 days. So with that, I would like to thank everyone and bring this event to a close. Thank you.